Hi everyone, welcome to today's Transformation Talk. I'm here today with Ann Kate Sullivan, who is an inspirational author, speaker, and teacher. And I'm very, very honored to have you here today. So thank you for coming and being with us.
Thank you. It's so great to be able to be online and talk about transformation, my favorite subject.
Yes, mine too.
Yeah.
So, Ann, you have quite an amazing array of things that you've done and things that you do now. But I would love to, for the purposes of this conversation, I would love to start with your healing history. So you and your father were both ill, and and I'd love you to just sort of walk us through that. What happened?
Okay. In some families, there's a specific lineage, an illness that runs through a family lineage, and this was 10 years ago now. My son was 4, he's almost 14, so we're talking about 10 years ago, good decade. But the time, my grandmother had just died of breast cancer. Her son, my father, had a huge tumor under his right arm that was had started a squamous cell carcinoma and had gone into his lymphatic system. 0% chance of survival for him. And then I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I had a breast tumor in my right breast. I was diagnosed at the Chiron Clinic in London with stage 1 breast cancer. And it's a shock when we've just buried my grandmother, and now this is happening with my father. They're saying he can't recover, and what's interesting, I'm going to pull up my book. I had actually been working in London with a group of healers, and Fintorn had just published this book called Consider This. So I was full of great ideas, and then when this happened, I realized I was going to have to explore it and see if it really worked. And so my father was also very interested in healing and very, very sensitive, had always had health issues throughout his whole life. And we both knew we couldn't really go the medical route because, like, for instance, he was given a penicillin shot when he was young and was paralyzed for 6 months.
Oh my goodness. And
if I would go to the dentist and have an Novocaine, I would be ill for a week. So it was something we couldn't really face chemo or anything like that. So what we chose to do was to work with Charlotte Gearson, and who I knew from the New Approaches to Cancer group in England. And I worked with her. It's an amazing diet. She's got to be close to 90 now, still charging around, doing amazing things. Very well known in the UK, not so well known, I don't believe, in the US. Partially, I think that it's well known in the UK because the royal family uses that diet when they have issues. So I went down, studied with Charlotte. We did the diet for a year, and it's really mostly carrot juice. That's mostly what you do is a lot of carrot juice. Hippocrates healing soup. Basically, you cut all meat, all sugar, all grains out of your diet. So you're purifying yourself. And what I was learning is that if you take the garbage out of yourself, your body automatically starts to rebalance. So we did that for a year. I was doing thermal imaging to check to make sure. And I chose thermal imaging because it's heat-based. It's not radioactive. It's not going to cause any harm. So we were both using thermal imaging to check. Dad had a surgery to have his tumor removed, but that was it. He didn't do anything else. We watched our body heal. We watched it every time we went back. It went from red, inflamed, to green. Green was the sign that it was cooling and getting better. So that was really amazing. And then we decided, actually with our doctor, this really fun guy named Mitch Fleischer, who's very open-minded, said, why don't we go down and see John of God? So my mom and the doctor and Dad and I got on the plane, went down to Abidjania in Brazil, which was just this wild trip, and had healings with John of God. And it's an amazing place. I don't know, I'm talking away. I don't know if you want to ask questions or slow me down or...
No, go ahead. Yeah, I'll stop you if I want to.
Okay. Anyway, it was really fun. We get there. I'm wearing white. My favorite color is white. We get there. Everybody's wearing white. And there are lines of people. There's a stage in front. There are lines of people that go through. He has 60 healing mediums around him. So you go into this place that's been dedicated to healing for 50 years with a whole group of people who are praying for you. And it was the first time I really, really felt prayer, and not from a religious perspective so much, but from a spiritual perspective, how powerful positive thoughts are for us. You get a whole bunch of people saying positive things for you, it has an impact, you know. So we went through, we saw all kinds of things, people in wheelchairs, every kind of disease. Anyway, when I got up to John of God, he said, yes, I can heal you. And had me write out a list of all the things that I felt that I had done that were incorrect in my life, that were out of alignment with other people, with myself, with the earth, everything I could think of. And I think I wrote something like 30 pages.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And then he had me, I think I burned it. After that. I gave it to him, and then, no, actually I gave it to him, and then they burned it. And it was like, that was a sort of absolution. So what I was realizing, what he was helping me do is clear that lineage. The lineage of the word, thought, and deed that had caused this illness. And anyway, I could really go into that some more. But what happened when we came back is that we went back for our thermal imagings. We'd been there for 2 weeks. When I came back, they couldn't find anything wrong with my body. So I'd just been there 3 weeks before, and they were like, "Oh, the camera's broken." So they sent me to another camera, and they said, "Oh, this camera was broken too," So they sent me to the third camera, and they're like, "We can't actually find anything wrong with your body. What have you done?" So I started talking about it, and they just wanted me to leave. They didn't want to talk about it. So what's really interesting? So my dad was squamous, who had 0% survival rate. And I think he had, I can't remember what, I think he had an MRI. I can't remember what he did, but his was a little bit more serious. Also totally healed. He was completely fine, and still is. He's coming to visit me in about an hour, and we're going to go pick a puppy out for him for his Father's Day present.
Oh, how sweet.
So I still have my dad with me.
That's amazing. That's amazing. It's just amazing to hear these stories, because I also know people who John of God couldn't heal, and obviously there's the big one, like Wayne Dyer is a big one where he did perform spiritual surgery, and Wayne Dyer's cancer was gone, and but it's just incredible to really talk to someone who's had that experience.
It's I think there's definitely grace involved in it. And I honestly don't know why. When we were down there, I saw people in wheelchairs, and some people didn't walk again. But I did see one girl stand up and walk, who had been in a car crash her prom night, and had been in a wheelchair since for years, and she got up and walked. Wow. And it's just, anytime you see any miracle, we call them miracles. We don't know what it is. Something is transformed in them, and they're made whole again.
Yeah.
And why some people have that and why some people don't, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I think, and it's great. It's got to be grace. What I did feel down there, though, there were hundreds of people that came in every day, 3 days a week, and I felt that every single person benefited. Whether it was just a change in perspective, or they felt better about their crossing, or they were more at peace with someone who was on the other side. I think sometimes just being with a whole group, there was 6, they call them healing mediums, but they're so open, that whole place is so open to all sorts of dimensions, that you can be there. If you miss someone really deeply who's crossed on, they're still there with you. And that's healing in and of itself. So there's just more understanding that happens. And I think if people come back, they're prepared to cross into another dimension, and they realize, well, actually, this might be a pretty amazing, wonderful thing to get a new body and continue my journey elsewhere.
Wow.
Which is a huge, difficult conversation.
Yeah.
That's what I heard over and over down there. It was very sacred.
It sounds like it. It sounds like it from what I've heard. So you were, consider this, the book you held up earlier is about alternative therapies, and here you have this experience where you work with alternative therapies and your cancer disappears, and your father's as well. And so what happens next? Like, what path does this put you on?
So what happened when I came back and I knew that I was fine is I knew I needed to stay fine. Mm. Because this is the other thing. A healer can come and heal you. If you do what John of God says is, if you do 50% of your work, I can do the other 50% for you. And of course, it's not John of God. It's the light. It's the divine energy around John of God. So I started studying every kind of healing I could find. Just what really heals people, what keeps us healthy. I studied with Gabriel Cousins for a couple of years, doing a life food nutrition and the Essenes, and I studied with Chris Griscom for a bit, and she's got a center in New Mexico, in Galisteo, where they do multi-incarnational realities. I got a degree at University of Santa Monica in spiritual psychology, which was really great. That's a wonderful starting place for many people. And also, a lot of people went into remission from various illnesses. They're just clearing up their family patterns and forgiving themselves.
Right.
That's very powerful.
Wow.
So then what happened? This is another piece of grace, right? I actually, in a way, it sounds horrible, but in another way, it was wonderful. We were in the Santa Barbara fires, and our whole area that we lived in was decimated. And our house, actually, everything around it burned, but the internal structure of the house was okay. So I got to take most of my physical items and animals and so forth. But what happened is I had an allergic reaction, my chemical sensitivity thing again. I had an allergic reaction to what they were putting the fire out with, the chemicals used in the fire retardant, and what they used to clean the house. So I'd always struggled with asthma. The asthma really kicked in. I was on Ventolin, and I started having periodic bouts with blindness.
Wow.
So that's when I went to Gabriel Cousins, and I thought, okay, I need to do it again. I need to just cleanse my body, and my body will heal again, because I'd had that experience before. And it was definitely helping. My eyesight was restoring, but still struggling. So one night, so this is where it gets really cosmic. You ready for a cosmic piece?
I'm ready for it.
Okay, so here's the cosmic piece. So I'm driving across the desert. I'm by myself with the sun setting, and I have this feeling that comes over me that feels like I'm in Abidjania again. Just that sense of, well, there's something sacred going on. So I pulled the car over, and I was like, well, maybe it's the sunset in the desert. This is powerful. So I got out, and I'm looking at the sunset, and I see this light coming towards me that looked like a big orb or ball of light. It was interesting. So I'm looking at it, and I hadn't seen anything like that since Abidjania. So I said, well, if this is from God and this is to heal me, then I totally accept it. So it comes into me, and there's this light that has this intelligence, and it's working through my body. I was like, this is wild. But whatever it did, it just cleared my eyes and it cleared my lungs. I haven't had any asthma since, right?
Wow.
This was about 3 years ago. So I had no cell reception. I don't know where this came from, but whatever it was wonderful. So when I got up the mountain, I called my husband. And I said, are you with a healer working on me by any chance? Because this amazing thing had just happened. And he goes, yeah, I am. You could feel that? And wow. I said, I couldn't really miss that. I've just been healed of asthma. My eyesight's fine. I feel great. What's going on? And he says, oh, yeah, I'm with this healer named Howard Wills. And, yeah, he has been working on you long distance. So,
Whoa.
I know, right? So you know what I say next. I want to meet this guy.
Yeah.
So, actually, I did meet him. It was a few months later. I met him. I stepped off my horse, twisted my hip, and I'm hobbling around. And I hear he's back in town again. I'm like, okay, this is it. I'm going to meet him. I'm going to book the full hour session. I'm going to go for the whole experience. So I walk in, and he's got this kind of long white hair. He's wearing white. And I was like, oh, what a cool looking guy, you know, these blazing blue eyes. And he goes, he's from South Carolina. And he goes, why, you're an angel. You don't want to have a hurt hip, do you? And I said, no, I don't. So he goes, he does this thing. My body goes, I'm out of pain, totally out of pain again. And so this is, so now I'm like, what, who, you know,
who are you?
And how do you do this? And I want to learn more. Can I just move into your living room for a while? You know?
Wow, yeah.
So I did. I went to Kauai for about a month. Well, I went once for 10 days, and then I went back with my whole family. I took my husband and my 2 kids, and we all stayed in Hawaii with Howard, or next door to Howard, for a month, just learning everything we could. And I'm actually working on a book with him now, which maybe we'll talk about another time. But so what he did after 2 years of working with him, this gets more cosmic. Are you ready to take it to the next level?
Bring it on.
Okay. It's amazing what suffering will make us do, right? Mm-hmm. We have something, a life-threatening illness, a divorce, a death, something happens to us, and we go, oh my God, I have to view this a new way. Mm-hmm. So he said, I think you're really ready to fully know the light. Are you ready to fully know the light? Do you want to have an experience totally fully of the divine light? I said, I do really want this experience. So he talked to my husband, who is a really wonderful man named John Patrick Sullivan, who's a yogi and has spent a lot of time in India and is very spiritual, and so he just thought it was very exciting. Not your common man, I think, but anyway, they set up an experience, and we didn't really know exactly what was going to happen, but Howard opened the doors of the light for me, the way it had happened for him when he was in his 20s. Mm-hmm. And all I remember, or the next thing I remember, is sort of collapsing on the floor because this enormous light was coming in. And then I crawled over to my bed and laid there actually for 3 days.
Wow. And
what happened, I could feel the light. It was almost, when I hear people talk about near-death experiences, I think it's similar. Because I could feel the light, and I knew that somehow it was going to, if I went into it, it would annihilate me. But I really wanted the experience. So I could feel my cords tugging on my parents, my mom and my dad, like not really wanting me to go. And I could feel my ancestral lineage. I could feel my grandmothers and grandfathers speaking, and the children in the future speaking. So I could feel my program, my genetic program. And I had to consciously let that go. And when I did, my personality makeup dissolved, and I just started expanding out. Just so much, being filled with so much sweetness, so much love, so much wisdom. And it just kept moving out and out and out until the personality self merged with this divine intelligence. And when I think about it, I was like, if you could imagine being in Einstein's head that was the size of the nighttime sky.
Wow.
Something like that. This intelligence that knew how every blade of grass was unfurling and how every little cell in our hair and our bodies is working, and that it loves us completely and totally beyond belief. And it knows how things come into being and how things cross out of being. And it showed me that everything's eternal. Nothing dies. Everything always lives. And it's just recycling. There's all this incredible recycling, and it's for our benefit and our growth so that we can become more conscious, and how incredible life is. And I think going into the experience, I'd had a judgment on humankind in a way, and that I felt, and it might have been part of the cancer actually, that I felt that humans were damaging the earth, and that, we weren't really being good stewards, and we were distorted in some way. But when I was in that state, I actually saw how beautiful everybody is. Everyone's completely beautiful. There are all these kind of sounds and radiant lights, and completely spectacularly beautiful, radiant, really like balls of light.
Mm-hmm.
So this intelligence that knows every blade of grass and every galaxy that's being formed and the timing of all things, and I say the timing in all things, and that there is no time. It's all happening simultaneously. Mm-hmm. Right? So anyway, I went into that state for 3 days. And after the third day, I don't remember much after that. At some point, there wasn't enough self to keep a memory. So it just dissolved. And I was totally fine with that. So Howard says, John Patrick, you're going to have to make her eat lamb. And I was vegan most of my life, so you're going to have to make her eat lamb to make her come back. So he starts putting lamb on my mouth, and it was like, I could feel these, it was like these contractions, like, wow. Like it was coming back every time in space, like, boom, 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 and just getting smaller and more contracted back into this body that felt so dense and heavy.
Uh-huh.
And but I looked at my husband, and with so much love there, and I got to see so much coming back in, you know, how beautiful this earth is, and all the stuff we hear, all the conspiracy theory and all that is just baloney. We're so looked after, and we're so protected, and anyway, all we really need to do is wake up.
Mm.
So
when you say all we need to do is wake up, what do you mean by that?
It's really see who we are. When I was on the other side and I saw that we're really these incredible light beings, these color beings, I think when we remember that's when, and we remember it a little bit at a time. And we had spoken a little bit about Aura-Soma. I make these colors.
Mm-hmm.
These, I don't know if you can see them.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, and I had done it. Some of them are like solid, like this is the yellow.
Mm-hmm.
But I had done it because I was curious. I started about 20 years ago. I was curious about how we're related to color. So what I found was each one would help us remember something about who we are. Like the yellow, here's the yellow. The yellow, if we're in a distortion, we'll be in fear. Mm. But it's curiosity. When we're curious, then we open up to our intelligence. So the fear falls away. And what you pink is love. But if we're in a distortion of it, then we might be in lack of love, and so forth. So I found that each color helped us open up as a portal or a gateway to our own soul, which helped me on the journey because I wasn't worried about the colors. I was familiar with them. Mm. You know? Mm-hmm. Like, oh yeah, there's the loving pink, and here's the, the conscious blue, and here's the...
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I'm so fascinated by that too, because I had an experience when I was healing from the Benjamin stillbirth, my son's stillbirth, where I used the Aura-Soma, and you have created your own, although you studied with the Aura-Soma for a long time. But yeah, they gave me an orange one that was to help with like etheric tearing and just...
Was it orange over orange?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that one's called the Humpty Dumpty Put It Back Together Again bottle.
That's great. That's exactly what I needed. That's exactly what I needed.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the orange is each color is so powerful, but when you've had a shock and a trauma like that, that's a really difficult experience that you went through. Mm-hmm. And so what the orange does is it helps you re-heal the whole etheric body. Mm-hmm. and regroup it so that you can move forward as a healthy person, even though you've experienced a loss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, okay, so you've had this incredible experience, and hearing you talk about it, just I just get goosebumps the whole time because it's truth, right? That's my reaction to truth. Although it might sound absolutely crazy to a lot of people.
It might, because you know what? Unless you had the experience, it would sound crazy.
Yeah.
And I could understand that.
So
anyway.
So how do you bring this back into the world? Well, I have two questions. One is, how do you physically come back to the world and like be a mom and a parent, like a mom and a spouse and all this stuff? And the second part of that question is, how do you bring it to the people that you work with?
They're both really, really good questions. First of all, I have to say that coming back was much harder than going out, because I couldn't walk, I couldn't function, and I was too sensitive to everything, noises, everything. So I crawled around for about a week. My husband was like, "Oh no, she's gone completely crazy." and I had to spend a lot of time meditating. That was basically what I had to meditate, and I had to. It was almost like my whole body mind complex was metabolizing the experience. It was I couldn't function. I knew from that point on I would not function in the same way again. I couldn't, because I couldn't hold on to the same judgments. I didn't see things the same way anymore, you know? And there was so much love. That was the thing that was really amazing. It was like I just fall in love with every person I'd see. You're so beautiful. My husband's like, "I'm not letting you out of the house." My kids liked it.
Yeah.
So what happened as everything started to metabolize, I really did fall in love with every single family member, even people that I had difficulties with before. I just thought they were wonderful, and I really saw what they were doing and how they were struggling, what their complexes were, and how it was perfect that they were set up in this perfect way with what they were learning about. And one thing that has been really different is that when souls cross, I see them for about 3 days, sometimes longer, sometimes a couple of weeks. So that's been really different, and some people find that really comforting. And I think the main way that things have been different and helpful is in being with my kids. I'm fully present with my kids. I'm really seeing them and helping them blossom in their own unique way, however they're going to do it. And they love that. When I just spend time with them and we talk about different things, they just really thrive. So both of my kids are doing really well. My daughter's she's a clairvoyant studying at Naropa University.
Wow.
And wants to be a midwife. And my son is at Krishnamurti School here in Shanghai, and he's very spiritual, very musical. And my husband, the greatest thing has been my relationship with my husband, because with this amount of openness, I feel like we fall in love more and more every day. What's been really interesting with him is we started talking about something called the unified field, which is what I went into, the unified field. And we started to feel or have several experiences where we experienced ourselves as one body, as one cosmic body. And then we pull back out and go, wow, and then kind of go, and not even touching. We're sitting next to each other, but really feeling the attunement and the alignment of souls.
Wow.
And that's been really powerful, and we have actually been doing quite a lot of work with couples, so that they could have the ability to use inquiry. We use inquiry to melt our differences and return to love. That's really fun. And that's part of the second question. And then what happened, and I think as part of the metabolization of the experience, is I started writing. Started writing books. I wrote this book, which we're going to redo. It's called Unquenchable Spiritual Fire, and these are prayers from the other side. A little bit about the story. I want to flesh out more of the story, but a little bit about the story. And then I started writing a whole series of children's books.
Yeah, I want to see this.
This is Sparkle and the Gift, and it's so fun. I mean, it just it's about a little girl who will not forget that she's from the light, and she starts to remind people of all their colors And how, so she takes, I'll show you another picture. She takes her mom, you see that? That's her mom, Alice. She takes her mom out into the sun so that she can remember that she's also a being of light. And she helps them find all their colors. Wow. So I've been reading this a lot to children, you know, and the children all know. They go, well, I'm a yellow, I'm intelligent, you know, or, oh, well, I'm a blue, that's because I'm really good at speaking. And, you know, they all know exactly what they are. And that's been so fun. And the second part of this story is about a little girl named Kuchina. I mean, well, actually, she's a fairy, she's not a girl. A fairy named Kuchina. And she goes on a healing journey. And over Ojai, actually. Here we have her flying over Ojai. And she thinks things are a little bit strange. So she does a sparkle dance. I'm giving you the very quick version. Can you see the sparkle dance?
Yeah, yeah. She
does a sparkle dance, and she makes a magical rose. This is her making the magical rose.
Wow.
She can get big and small. Anyway, the gardener gives it to his wife, Marta, who's very sick. And she has a healing dream. And in her healing dream, she remembers who she is. She remembers all of her colors, and she's restored again. So she gets up and she has her rainbow radiance dance, and she decides to live life in a new way. And her husband puts down the leaf blower and picks up his guitar, and they decide to live in peace and harmony from then on. So that's the first one, and the second one, I won't go into that one so much, but this is the proof. It just came through from...
Oh, exciting.
Yeah, we just got the first proof. It's called Sparkle in the Light. And this one's about healing, and also about a little girl named Ella. And when Ella gets curious, she has a light that shines out of her head. And everyone tries to get her to cut it out, to stop this nonsense, you know, to be normal.
Right.
And she finds out in the course of the story that it's her special gift. Her gift is to bring light to other people. So she learns how to use it.
Lovely.
So that's how, I think that's the primary way I've been sharing with people stories. I wrote 5 in the Sparkle series for kids. And I thought, well, gosh, you know, one of the best ways we have of sharing stories from any dimension is storytelling. Or one of the ways we have of transforming. And in a way that's, they're like fairy tales for kids of all ages. But once I think these ideas start to filter into our consciousness, and we sit with them for a little while, we're more open to exploring. And so that's what we're doing here.
Fun. Yeah. Color and story. I love it.
That's it. Just being a kid.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you've had these incredible experiences. I'm just curious, like what, just maybe to wrap up before I ask my final 3 questions, what would you say to people who are just sort of struggling with where they're at? They can feel that something's holding them back, but they don't know what it is. Like they're in their complexes, I think was the word you used. I don't know. Do you have any sort of words that you would share?
Come study the colors. But the main thing is the yellow. Right? Because I'm going to just hold it up for a second. Because the yellow, when we're confused and fearful and contracted and depressed, and it's normal. It's a normal human condition. It's what the ego does. It's what the personality does. It's not who we really are. So if we're feeling any of those things, we're caught in a misinterpretation of reality. And which is one thing to understand intellectually, but it's another thing to really begin to have an experience of yourself as joy. Or yourself as love, or yourself as intelligence, or wisdom, or beauty, which is really what we are, compassion. And so I think anytime we suffer, it's our soul telling us that we have work to do. It's time to get busy. Yeah?
Yeah.
And start Yeah, and find a mentor or a person or a path that's correct for you, and set off down it, because we're really on Earth. The only reason we're here is just to grow in terms of consciousness. We're eternal beings. It goes on forever. It's never going to end. So there's no point in committing suicide. It just slows everything down. So really the thing is this. We have bodies, and we have this amazing opportunity to experience ourselves as separate human beings who are alive and curious and growing. It's such an incredible, beautiful, beautiful gift. So when we can get up in the morning and we can forgive ourselves, the biggest thing we can do is forgive ourselves for everything. Everything we've ever done that's incorrect. We only did it out of ignorance, and so did our parents, and so did our grandparents, and so did all the people around us who we felt hurt by. So we can just forgive all of it and drop it. And what's really amazing is as soon as we do that, as soon as we forgive and we drop that, a lot of illnesses go away almost immediately overnight. And a lot of our suffering, our heaviness goes away. Because we carry these bags around with us that we don't need to. And so that's a practice. You can do it as a daily practice, and it just clears the dust of the world off of you. And you're free.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds so easy to say it, and I know that the reality of it when people are feeling really stuck is definitely more challenging. And I don't want anybody listening to sort of blame yourself for not being anywhere else, you know.
That's why I brought up the forgiveness practice.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Really, it is this huge thing. It's a huge thing to go, we never want to blame ourselves. If we're sick, or we're going through a divorce, or someone close to us has died, or what, we never blame ourselves for it. I know we say we create our own reality, or it's a popular thing in the New Age to say we create our own reality. Well, it's not entirely true. It's really a little, what I saw on the other side was something a little bit different, which is that, yes, we're a predisposition of our word, thought, and deed. But that comes from a huge family. Our grandparents and great-grandparents, the things they thought, the things they did, the wars they endured, the murders, the rapes, the torture, all the things people went through. It lives in us. So when we're suffering, we can't blame ourselves for it. There's a huge lineage back there that we can get curious about. What does happen, I believe, or I saw quite clearly, is when we start to forgive in pieces. Huge forgiveness piece. Everything that you can think of, forgive it, forgive it, forgive it, because you're absolving yourself. What you're doing is you're releasing your family from their own torment. 7 generations forward, 7 generations back. It's a biblical thing, but it's actually what goes on. So you're starting to release. As that releases, then your own suffering and torment, it starts to dissipate. Sometimes it's really slow. Sometimes it's a really slow process. It might take a couple of years to do that. You're working with someone and, really finding your own way. But inquiry, I think forgiveness, and the process of inquiry, self-inquiry, which was made well known by Ramana Maharishi in India. But self-inquiry is a 10,000-year-old Vedic path of enlightenment. It's the most ancient path to self-realization. And it was used by Plato, it was used by Socrates. It has been in our Western culture for a long time too. But that's the main practice, and that's what my husband and I do every day. That's what we do with clients when they come. Forgiveness practice, inquiry practice. And then when that becomes a part of people's lives, over time you become more and more and more free. Some people, boom, they just get it, they wake up, they're happy, they're free, they go on and they just become creative beings, living like gods and goddesses. That's rare. For most people, it's more of a, and I think maybe it's better if it's a slower process, because you don't have as much that you have to metabolize. Like for me, I had a lot to metabolize. But what I see in people is it's usually better if it's a slow process. You learn about your healing. You learn what to do to make your body well. For me, it was the Gerson diet. For somebody else, it might be chemotherapy. You don't know. You have to stay really attuned to it.
Right.
If you lose someone, how do you want to keep talking with them? How do you want to pray with them? Do you want to stay in touch with them on the other side? So there are all these different things. But for me, forgiveness and inquiry as a practice. It's not a dogma.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a religion.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a practice of consciousness. Yeah?
Yeah.
I think, you know, we hear people talk about it. You hear Eckhart Tolle talk about it.
Yeah.
Wayne Dyer talk about it. Marianne Williamson. And,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And if people are curious, too, on your website, which it's AnnKateSullivan.com, and Ann is AYN.
Yes.
So you talk about inquiry on your website if people are curious about that as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let me finish with my last 3 questions. I'm so curious to see how you're going to answer these.
Okay.
If you could wave a magic wand and change anything about the world, what would it be?
Oh, magic wand. I love that. Magic wand. Well, if I could really wave a magic wand, I would remove suffering from the world. But you know what? It's an interesting thing, because I think if I did it, probably would be an unkindness, because people have their pieces that they're working through. And so I think if I can answer that a little bit better. So if I could make a magic wand, I would make the light more accessible to the planet. Mm-hmm. So the people that wanted it could have it. And of course that's already true. But I'd make it more accessible. And yeah. And I think when people stand in that light, when you really, really fully stand in the divine light, when you have a transmission from the divine light, there is no such thing as suffering. Mm. And I would want that to be available for the people that sought it. Mm. And I would want to make sure that all children in the world were fed. Mm. You know, and that all people in the world had as much. I think people do, but they don't know it. That we have such an incredibly abundant world. Mm-hmm. But I don't think people necessarily know how to use the resources. And so maybe we'd bring more education to the world, more awareness, more awakening, more enlightenment to the planet. That's the magic wand, I believe.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's being waved by many people.
Many people. It's time.
Yeah.
It's time. It's the time of the light, you know?
Yeah.
It is that now.
Wow.
Yay.
What brings you the most joy?
Oh, the most joy. So many things. So many things bring me joy, and it's funny, sometimes it's the most simple of things. You know, sometimes it's just waking up and turning over and just looking into the eyes of my husband or my children and just seeing them there and how beautiful they are. You know, or sometimes it's just listening to the birds singing and their joy, just because that they just know that life is joyous and they're just singing with it. I love sharing the stories. I love sharing consciousness with others. I love seeing other people wake up out of their pain and suffering and sorrow, because it's, why be there, you know? Mm-hmm. I love seeing miracles, what we call miracles. Mm-hmm. I think that probably brings me my greatest joy is when I see somebody who's just been excruciating pain just all of a sudden be made well again. Mm. I love that. You know?
Amazing.
That's the best. So, and also just seeing, you know, when people are free, when people are really free of their constrictions, people just sing and they play music and they create stories and they just create and create, endlessly create. So I feel surrounded by artists, and I feel like, oh gosh, there must be a new renaissance of light going on with all this fun play.
Yeah.
And that brings me a lot of joy.
That's great.
And just connecting to the light itself. Just connecting to the light.
Mm-hmm.
Connecting to the light itself is joy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So then maybe you just have to go, well, I am joy.
Right. Yes. Yes. Remembering that in those harder moments.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Final question. What is one fun or interesting thing about you that makes you uniquely you?
About me now. So this is a really great question, because when I dissolved into the light, I realized it was myself. Mm. so there was a big zero there. But coming back, I had this really interesting thought, because because I do have a personality. It regrouped, right? There's this personality who totally loves life, loves kids, loves being here with others, and so probably if there's something unique about me, well, that I walked to the other side and came back with completely different eyes. Mm-hmm. That's probably makes me a little unique.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
And I'm a pretty happy person. People are like, "Are you real? Are you for real?" I'm like, I think so.
Seem to be. That's so funny.
So, let's talk about what's real. No.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
well, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your story today and for bringing your stories to the world. I can't wait to get one of the Sparkle books for my daughter. I think that would be really fun.
Wonderful. Let me know how you feel about Sparkle.
I will, for sure.
Okay. Thank you so much, and thanks for all the work you're doing in the world, helping people transform.
It's my pleasure. It's my joy.
Yay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.